Good morning. I ran into a new scenario for me because I've done this quite often, but never had this happen where everything fails to work. I even put the arms from a 5-ton onto the 12-ton to give it deeper penetration. But after 3 explosive disengagements of the hydraulic puller, and the last one where it impacted there and bent the thing, it's probably still usable, but it just kind of shows the forces that you're dealing with. It still didn't want to come off. Now here's where some people might put heat to it, and that might be effective. I've put penetrating oil on it. I don't know. I beat the piss out of it to the point where this brake drum is no longer even good, and I don't care about that because I'm not reusing it. So at this point, what I have to do is try to find a way, and I've done this kind of on other areas, like on the front forks. If there's a bearing down low there where you can't get jaws on it when you pull that fork, the axle shaft on the fork off, then sometimes you have to do a 45-degree slice with the grinder, and then on the inner race of the bearing, and then pull it off. So why I'm holding this brake assembly up here is because I want to not cut, if I can help it, not cut through the brake pads and make airborne the I don't know what it is, but there's no point in doing that if I don't have to. So I'm looking for a place that I can cut that will give me the best probability of releasing the pressure around that tapered axle, and not hit the brakes pads if possible, and go through the least meat metal wise, because out here it won't matter, but down towards the center of this hub it gets thick, and none of this does anything until you get to cutting on that center. Oh, sorry about the camera. None of this cutting does anything until you get to cutting on that center, and that's when it's going to release it. And when you do, you want to have as much room as possible. So I'm thinking triangulate a cut here and a cut here, and take away what you can. That way you can get it clear or sight line, and not end up gouging into the wheel motor's shaft. And then, because your brake drum's ruined, if you're wanting brake assembly on there, you'll have to source brake drum somewheres. So if you're not running brake assemblies, then it won't matter, because hopefully you'll have another hub that you've converted to a flange and ready to go. Let me get started here and we'll see how it goes. Like I said, this is new ground for me, but it may be reason that people are looking at these videos is because they've tried everything else, and that's why I wanted to cover this and see if my procedures that I've used for other similar things, to see if it works for that. You know what I mean? Just share information. All right, hang on. Okay, so this is definitely where you're going to have eye protection and respiratory, and you're going to have ventilation, okay? There's no doubt on this type of thing, okay? All right, and also you should never modify your mower.
Okay, so I might take me a little break here, think on it, make sure, nothing's set in stone in this stuff. But my thinking is now I can see the meat of this flange, and if I had clearance here, with this actuator gone, then I would feel more comfortable in that last cut. Above all else, I don't want to get into the shaft. Alright, after more consideration, I realize it's too difficult to try to remove this actuator because it's not exactly bolt-on, it's got things. But if I open up more real estate here, should be able to take off one of these pads. Once the pad's off, then it's clear line of sight to the surgery, the critical part, you know. Alright, so let me open up another window, and then we'll get to the important part. Okay, so I opened up a bigger window. Now I should be able to get to the brake pad removal and give me a better chance of not damaging the wheel motor shaft. So let me take this brake pad off. Okay, so it looks like my first instinct cut here was correct in that if I go too deep, it would go to the keyway. So that's probably going to be my target cut to get down to the problem. You should wear protective gloves. These discs can fracture and fly out very quickly. And I've seen people lose fingers. Okay, see if I went too deep and the blade's going to stroke the keyway channel. That's why I chose the cut path that I did. Still having trouble, obviously, but we're getting there. Gotten as deep as I can. You see I'm nearly through the brake back pad, backing plate mounting square, and then once you're through that, you're getting into wheel motor metal, which I don't want to do, which is, to be more specific, the mounting plate square. There it is. That's this piece. So that is behind there, mounts to the wheel motor for these bolts, and then the brakes backing plate mounts to those attachment points. Sorry about the camera work. So as such, I've cut as deep as I can, and I'll hit it a couple more times with the hammer. If it's still not releasing, now I got to go for a diagonal cut, because the only way you can get these to relieve pressure without the front edge of your blade going deeper than you want, yet not getting deep enough on the subject part, is to go at a diagonal. And the hope is that sooner or later you get into where you relieve enough pressure because you take away enough structure that it will come free. Okay, the next cut I decided to make before I did the diagonal, because one, if this didn't work then it gives me more clearance, was to try to, and I just eyeball stuff, to come straight down from that key, from the keyway. I missed my mark by just a tad, but let's see what happens as it's cut all the way on the perimeter, but there's still meat holding on the fatty part of the flange, you know, that fatty part of the hub. So I'm gonna tap it and see if I can clear away any more material, but the hope is every time you do that, you might actually get lucky and the thing finally release pressure. Just don't hit your threads out here. Still nothing, so I'll probably have to cut deeper and or cut through this right here to take that chunk out, and that gives me better visibility. Now, when you guys are hammering, you young guys, just know this. Remember I said something about don't hit that? Well, if you don't want to hit that, don't look at it. Look at what you want to hit. As soon as you feel yourself starting to look at what you don't want to hit, take a break. Come back to it, and then just laser focus on what you want to hit, and that should be where the hammer ends up. You know, it may not seem like much, but that's another piece of the puzzle right there. See, now, with all this opened, there's no reason not to focus on that. But you gotta keep in mind that as deep as you cut here, you can't cut as deep up there. So it's difficult, and basically you wanna keep tapping at it if you can, to find out when you're done, because you don't want to do more than what's necessary. Because more than what's necessary could also be damaging. Alright, so while you were looking, I took the bolts off for the backing plate, and I want to cut it off and get it out of the way, because I'm trying to be very careful not to damage my wheel motor. So, if I make a cut here, obviously, and it's already halfway cut through over here as a consequence of the first cut, then that backing plate should come away and give me better visibility, okay? So that's what I'm going to do. Okay, with the backing plate away, now I can remove the mounting bracket, just because I just didn't have it all out of the way. Once it's loosened, then I just make a little slice here and on the opposite side. So once I take the bolts out, I'll bring it forward, cut it here, rotate it, cut it there. And it's gone. Now we're down to just the shaft and the remains of the brake drum, which is the original culprit here. So now the bolts are out of that, so that lets me bring the mounting flange forward away from the wheel motor. And obviously then I can make a real easy cut here, flip it around, easy cut here, and get more access. Okay, now with everything out of the way, it's easy to see that I wasn't nearly through. But when you have that line of sight where you can see that back shaft, now it gives you more perspective on how deep you can go. Although I may cover that up with a strip of leather, because I don't want hot particles going backwards on my seal. Before, they really couldn't because you had all this hardware in the way. But for the next cuts, I'd rather, nibble at it and be careful than go too deep. And I'd rather give up the visual on seeing the difference between the shaft size back here and the shaft size up here. So I'm going to cover that up and go ahead and make a couple more cuts. Okay, so here's where that diagonal cut comes in. I'm going to want to aim for the front side of my blade to hit or just miss the center of the shaft is where I approximate it, even though I can't see it because of that twine that I got in there to protect the seal. The back side of my blade, I want to come to the keyway. Okay? And the reason being is if you go straight in on a cut like this, by the time you get depth here, you're going to be well into this material here. Versus when you do a drive-by cut, then there's more probability you'll get enough depth to let the metal spread and finally release. So let me see if I can get that done. Okay, now I got a depth cut. Now I'm going to do a valley by coming in at an angle like this. It just gives me more clearance. And one way or another, it's coming off. Even if I have to chew that thing off. Okay, I opened up that cut with a couple miters or bevels, whatever you want to call them. Gives me better visual sideline and stroke a little bit more on the depth. And of course, you never know when things are going to change. So I always do a couple hits. No more force than what's necessary, right? Because above all else, I want to try to save the wheel motor. And y'all can make your own decisions on if this is too much force or what's not. You know what I mean? The problem with the heat-in process is the only time on a large piece of steel like that I can get enough heat, and we're talking about that kind of thickness, is if I've also made the seal and everything lose its sealing properties. Let me get cutting. Okay, you can clearly see the top of the key right there. So we're down to critical depth there. We're running out of space over here, and there is a couple cosmetic things over here, but not much. Now I'm going to give it a good whack or two, see if anything decided to change. See if I can find my hammer. I'm not going to lie, that came off camera. I got a couple good hits that way, and she popped right off. So that's it. What was holding it, I have no freaking clue. But the damages extent are just a little nick there, and just a couple surface abrasions.